welcome to another video.
We are at one of the most touristic places in the San Francisco area, Alcatraz Island. Welcome to Alcatraz Island. This place is located 1.25 miles away off the San Francisco shore, and it was developed in the 19th century as a military prison. And finally, in 1934, the island was converted into a maximum security federal prison known as Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary, which hold the most disobedient and incorrigible inmates in the federal penal system.
Okay, we have arrived to one of the most iconic spots in the island, the water tower. Over there you can see some inscription, peace and freedom, welcome, home of the free Indian land. All this is based on the history of the Indian takeover of the island. This is our first look to the cells block.
So we are arriving to the cells block, and they had around 400 cells in total in the island, but they kept the maximum capacity up to 330 something, and they were divided into 4 different blocks. So the first block was block A, and mostly was used for storage purposes, but then block B and C was the one that they used for the regular inmates. So if you were to be an inmate here, this will probably be the first thing you will see. To take your uniform, your shoes, and then your personal items like toiletries. The size of the cells was 5 by 9 feet. So if you were to stand like this, you'll probably touch the ceiling.
Also, another thing that you'll be learning is that inmates, they were not addressed by name, by last name, they were addressed by numbers. And that was to kind of remove them from their individual identity, because once they stepped on Alcatraz Island, they were no longer John, whatever their last name might be. There were numbers. This right here, this is the yard. Something that you need to keep in mind is that the only guaranteed thing that inmates had was shelter, some sort of healthcare, and food. Anything else was a privilege. And by anything else, I mean receiving mail from family members, that was a privilege. Checking out a book from the library, that was a privilege. The yard, this was definitely a privilege. Most inmates, when they came over here, this is the only chance they had to appreciate the outside. This is the only chance they had to actually breathe fresh air. And pretty much, there was not much of a view, as you can see. The only thing that you were able to see was this big wall. You couldn't even see the sea. Well, coming down, of course, you can see the sea, but once you're actually here in the yard, there is no way that you're seeing anything outside these walls.
Now we're entering to Block D, which consisted of 36 segregation cells and 6 solitary confinement. Inmates were confined to their cells 24 hours per day, with the exception of 1 visit per week to the recreation yard. This block was also known as the Hole because it included total darkness and a restricted diet.
This is the inside of a typical cell in D block. This is worth mentioning. They were a little bit bigger than the other ones just because they were confined 24/7. They were not allowed to go out at any time. You can see if I'm stretching my arms, I can touch butt ends on the walls. If I rest my hand, I'm able to touch the ceiling. And you got the toilet, the sink, and I'm assuming the bed was here. And that was it. There is another door in here And then you have the actual bars right there.
The majority of the time at Alcatraz Island, work included factory work, laundry, general prison maintenance, and food preparation. Inmates received nominal wages. As cash can be a dangerous commodity in the prison, wages were credited to individual accounts in the prison trust fund. Inmates drew on their accounts to buy from the prison commissary, pay fines, or send funds to their families. Any remaining balance was paid out in cash when the inmate was released. You can notice in some of the exhibited cells that inmates had different items such as paintings, books, magazines, which they were able to buy with their work money. Seeing the structure of the prison brings us to a question. Was it possible to escape? A total of 36 inmates put the supposedly escape-proof Alcatraz to test. Of those convicts, 23 were captured, 6 were shot to death, and 2 drowned. The other 5 went missing and were presumed drowned, including Frank Morris and brothers John and Clarence Angling.
Using some of the supplies that they could get, Frank Morris and the brothers John and Clarence Angling made the most creative escape attempt in the history of Alcatraz. Placing dummy heads made of soap, cement, and paint under their blankets in the middle of the night, the escapees crawled out of their cells through the small vents, scaled the utility corridors to the roof, slid down the stovepipe, and crept to the shoreline. Over months, they secretly carved holes in the walls of their cells using improvised tools like spoons and metal scraps. They created a hidden passage to the utility corridor. The escapees crawled out of their cells through the small vents, scaled the utility corridor to the roof, slid down the stovepipe, and crept to the shoreline. The 3 men had reached the bay. As they slipped into the water, using a raft fashioned out on a raincoat, they were never seen again. Up till this day, nobody has any idea if they really escaped, if they were able to just go away, if they're in South America. Well, nobody knows. But that's the story of them.
This was the library, which held approximately 15,000 volumes, including philosophy, fiction, and education material. Most prisoners sought mental escape through books. Literate convicts read between 75 to 100 books a year. It is important to mention that access to the library was prohibited. Inmates with privilege to the library will make a list of the books they wanted, and the guards will get them for them. Books with sexual or violent content were prohibited. This was the dining hall. Prisoners were served 3 meals a day, and it was known as the best food served in the federal prison system. In fact, the first warden, James Johnston, made sure to serve excellent food because he knew poor food was often the cause of prison riots, and inmates could repeat as many times as they wanted. Menu included a variety of drinks such as milk, juices, coffee and tea, fruits, vegetables, pork, beef, and chicken, and they were even serving desserts such as cakes and pies. Was the warden's house. For many years, Alcatraz's most powerful resident lived in a Victorian cottage on Officers Row. So this is how it looks now. And then you can take a look here at how it used to look back in 1960s until 1970. A fire destroyed almost the entirety of the building. And he was actually the responsible of the good functioning of the prison.
This is the morgue, located within the prison complex. It served as a place to handle the bodies of inmates who died while incarcerated. It opened in the 1930s, and the morgue was a small, stark room where autopsies were performed. Most inmates who died at Alcatraz passed away due to natural causes or accidents, although some were the result of violence or suicide. that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you really found this video interesting.
Please subscribe, like this video, and share.
See you next time.
You're technically